What is an uncontested divorce? When do we use it? How do we use it? An uncontested divorce is where two married persons decide together, within reason, that they'd like to be divorced. One person can bring up the idea, hey, I don't think we're getting along. I think we should get divorced. But we do get along just enough that maybe we can resolve all of the issues of our marriage on written papers, submit them to the court, avoid going to court in person, and resolve our financial, equitable, and marital property. A divorce is where one person in a marriage, one spouse, files to be divorced from the other, rendered asunder, broken apart, legally and physically separated. There are times when there's marital strife that one person will leave the marital house. People like to say in that instance, we're separated. Well, they're physically separated, but perhaps not legally separated. You're only legally separated if you have a document called a separation agreement. And that could be one path towards an eventual uncontested divorce. But another path is where one of the spouses actually files for a divorce. You don't have to, at the outset, say that you're filing for an uncontested divorce, but you can. However, one person files the paperwork called a summons and complaint, a summons and notice, or a summons and complaint. Either way, you ultimately need the complaint. The complaint is the knock at the door. Well, the summons is the knock at the door. Hey, I'd like to be divorced from you. Break apart our marriage. And the complaint is the allegation. So it could be adultery, cruel and inhuman treatment, you're a terrible person, harassment, and then you can use a truly uncontested divorce reason. In New York, basically we just don't get along. It's called an irretrievable breakdown of the marriage. And when one person asserts that there's been an irretrievable breakdown in the marriage, well, then it's pretty hard to refute. It's hard to say, no, we didn't have a breakdown, because the act of one person saying we have an irretrievable breakdown really makes it an unretrievable, if that's a word, irretrievable breakdown. So the uncontested divorce is where all of the paperwork is done sort of in advance. I say sort of, I give wiggly woggly words as a lawyer. I try and be as clear and transparent as I can, but that's sort of just the way the law works. At the outset, you need to file a summons, purchase an index number, and then have that served upon the other person. Then you can prepare the remainder of the documents. The person receiving it, that's the defendant, they have to either acknowledge receipt of the documentation or be served through the process server, which sort of ramps up things, and it's not impossible to have an uncontested divorce after that, but it just doesn't feel good, right, when you're served divorce papers. So the index number is the social security of the case, and then you can work on, by a stipulation of settlement, what do we have to divide? We have a child, we have a bank account, we have a property, pensions, we have 2 cars, and then you have to split those up. And if there's a child, in my example there was, how are we going to share time with this child? What holidays do you get? What holidays do I get? When will I see this child? Things like that. Now, in an uncontested divorce, affidavits, sworn statements that replace testimony if you're in a contested divorce trial. The affidavits of a defendant, affidavits of a plaintiff, those are the spoken words written down. Oh boy. And that's it. That's an uncontested divorce. No fighting. Now, if at any place along the way there's a fight over the division of the house, there's a fight over who should buy the house, there's a division over how we should share parenting and custody, well, that may make it, and it may remove it from being an uncontested divorce and make it a contested divorce. So, in sum, an uncontested divorce is where we file all of the paperwork without having to go to court. If you need help, call me.